Running a call center is tough. Leading a sales team is a challenge. Luckily, your hosts know what it takes to succeed. What you can expect from your two guides? Conversations that won't be overly scripted, definitely not salesy or boring, just filled with as much value as possible. Each week, Jason and Oliver will bring you topics to help scale your team, increase profits, and actually feel like you are winning. So, if you are ready to up your game and become the best in the business, tune in, take notes, and be prepared to learn. And here they are with another episode of Call Center Confidence. It's Jason Cutter and Oliver Catt.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday and welcome to another episode of Call Center Confidence with Cutter and Catt. However, today, once again, we are minus the Cutter. That's right, he's doing his travels, he's working here, there, and everywhere, and keeping very busy. But don't worry, it's not going to be a one-man show. As we mentioned in our post today, we are going to be talking about offshoring and outsourcing, especially in the contact center environment. And obviously to do that, I'm going to need some help and I'm going to need some other experts in that field. So replacing Mr. Jason Cutter today, I would like to welcome to the stage, and here he comes, Mr. Fred Stacy. There he is on the screen. Fred, how you doing today?
I'm good, Oliver. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you very well indeed. Thank you very much for joining us and filling those boots for Jason today. So thank you very much for joining us on this episode. So as I mentioned today, we're going to be looking and talking about contact center, offshoring, outsourcing, nearshore, offshore, close shore, onshore, everywhere, wherever people put their contact centers these days, all over the world, all over the globe. And bringing to us today, Fred's going to be bringing years and decades worth of experience in the contact center industry and especially the outsourcing industry as well. So Fred, just to give everybody out there a very brief, in a nutshell, introduction of yourself. Tell everybody out there today exactly where your background is, where it's come from, and what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So 26 years in the 26 plus in the contact center market. I was just figuring this out for our marketing team. I started in this industry in 95. Wow. So the gray beard kind of gives me away, but I'm old apparently, especially in this game. So I started out actually as an agent on the phones, in a sales environment, moved into leadership quickly, ran centers, helped companies start new call centers. Mostly in the outsourcing space, and then moved into technology and spent 16 years, various different technology level roles, which you might say, why am I talking about outsourcing? Well, I mean, obviously selling to outsourcers has been a major part of the technology space, but more importantly, about 4 years ago, I joined up with Outsource Consultants, which is the largest BPO advisory firm, and we source 100 plus pieces of business to over 500 plus BPOs globally. So, I get to live inside this market from a unique perspective, which is, one that sits in between and advises companies. So we get a little bit of a different lens, so to say, on the marketplace. But that's me.
Good. So like a wealth and access to a lot of people. Yeah. So like today, talking about this in the mainstream, because there's a lot of people out there that outsource, and companies now are outsourcing more than ever. And, we're both in the outsourcing world as part of what we do. And one of the things out there that Fred and I had in common when we first kind of got put in touch, to Jason being away, is, we do outsourcing to contact centers on a global scale. And we are noticing a huge shift in the marketplace into that outsource environment, people taking their call centers everywhere. And not just people taking their existing call centers offshore, but also people taking their companies and migrating them into contact centers, into live chat, into web chat, voice chat, whatever it might be. And actually going, do you know what? We can develop some kind of customer experience or sales service for the world using outsourced call centers because of so many different reasons. And we're going to get into that today. So Fred, looking at your experience and talking about where you're coming, why do you think at the minute more and more companies are choosing to offshore, nearshore, wherever it might be in the world, and we'll talk about the difference between the two in a moment. Why do you think they're starting to do it now more than ever? What have you seen in the most recent kind of days?
Yeah, so I mean, I can talk about my side of the pond. So what we've seen, I mean, for one thing, in the U.S., we've got a labor shortage in the contact center industry. So it's not just retail and restaurants and hospitality. It's definitely impacting the contact center. So the need for agents, people to be able to take the chats, the emails, the live phone calls is critical. But I also think there's an underpinning dynamic that I believe the tech industry is really driven, which is the concept of do what is core to your business, what is critical, and then outsource the rest. And you hear about Silicon Valley talking about this all the time. I think it's being adopted down or back into the more traditional brick and mortar companies. And everybody just recognizes that it's not the same as it was, 20 years ago, where you just needed somebody to answer the phone. These outsourcing companies are experts at what they do, and they not only can bring as good as, but oftentimes we even see better performance in customer experience for our clients, the customers, so to say. So
Yeah.
I think there's all kinds of dynamics, but I mean, COVID, clearly you can't talk about the outsourcing impact unless you talk about the last year and a half. Clearly that's also driving some of the need for alternate geo redundancies. I mean, It's the reality is we all thought we were prepared, and then COVID happened and nobody was prepared for that. So there's all kinds of underpinning dynamics, but those are the primary drivers that we're seeing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and a couple of points I really want to touch on. The first one, and I don't want to dwell on COVID because we all talk about it all the time, and I think right now COVID makes up probably one of the largest discussions between anybody. I've gone into meetings before and we've said, right, nobody mentioned COVID. All right, whatever we're doing now, we're moving forward and we're fixing this. All right, I think you're absolutely right, and I think it has seen a shift, and I think it's. It's sometimes for the better because you're not seeing the workforce or people have been out. I think certain industries and certain countries have suffered more in the contact center and the outsourcing market because of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
But as you said, I think the workforce piece that I want to touch on is, do you think that the people that were working in the industry before, since having COVID or going through the pandemic, have realized that they don't want to work in these industries anymore, which is why outsourcing has become a primary source for these companies, because they can't get the workforce because they don't want to go back to that environment, or working from home and as a contact center working from home because we've had to. People want to go back to the office and they can't. So do you think that that's had a big part to play in the shift of geolocations?
Well, yes. So I believe that, especially here in the States, again, I'll talk about this side of the pond going outward, right? And you can tell me about your side of the pond going outward from you. But what we've seen is clearly I started out as an agent in this industry. I didn't come out of school and go, I want to be in call centers. And back then they were call centers. I mean, and that hasn't changed. Here in the US, we don't look at those jobs as a society as a great career path. I mean, look at me now. Clearly, starting as an agent, there is a great career path, but people don't talk about it enough. But here in the U.S., nonetheless, it's looked at as not some spectacular thing. I mean, the people in the contact centers that I talk to that work for Apple, they're not telling people, I'm in customer service for Apple. I'm in Apple. I mean, it's not a positive thing here in the States. However, you go over to any of the emerging markets, any place in the outsourcing market, it is a great job. Healthcare, place great. They take care of their employees. It's a different feeling, right? Going to work inside a call center. I remember going over to the Philippines when it was first emerging, and it was amazing. I mean, I've never seen people so excited to work and help people, over the phones. And, it's only logical that mentality is going to drive more people to look for those types of employees or, subcontractors through outsourcing, right?
Do you know what? I think you just hit a great point there. And that was talking about the kind of career path and the, how can I say, the persona of working in a call center. Look, I started off on the phones. I started off as a sales agent. That's where I did, and that's how I am where I am today. I wouldn't be doing what I do today. Training and delivering for managers and sales agents, or let alone my outsourcing business, because it's all stemmed from, as you say, working in a call center. When I was young and when I first started in that call center industry, for me, I'm not going to say I was embarrassed to work in call centers, but I didn't go out there and publicize it. I wasn't going out there and shouting from the rooftops going, hey, guess what? I work in a call center. Because back then it was like, oh, you know what? I've had to submit to, powers that be, and I've got to go and work in a call center.
Yeah.
Truth be told, I enjoyed it. I met some of the best friends I've known for a very long time. One of my business partners is from my very first contact center job, and we've known each other for a bloody long time. And I've created so much from that avenue that, as you say, people don't talk about it enough. One of my great training contacts who worked for me a number of years ago in the UK, he worked for a company for a very long time. He worked his way up. He's now the head of learning and development for the company. And he's grown up with that. When you look at him, say, oh, yeah, I've been at that company for so long, but now he's doing amazing things. And he's changing the way that contact center works. And that's what opportunities are there for you. And then moving as you shift into the other environments, the nearshores, the onshores, or wherever it is you might go. I work with a lot of South African call centers as a majority. And, over there, it is a career path. It is a prestigious thing. And I love working with every member of the team that I contract out to. I jump on Zoom with these guys. They're energetic. They're friendly. They love doing what they do. The pay for the region and what they're doing is fantastic. And these are things that we need to share with everybody. And the fact is that some people that snub their noses up at working in call centers, I'm happy to say goodbye to those people.
Yeah.
So, talk to me about obviously why, your kind of areas of expertise is why do you think, but if you were to give me the top 3 reasons of why people outsource their businesses to, whether it be and when we talk about nearshore, onshore, I want to be clear and let everybody know, offshore is, the other side of the world or a big journey away or something like that. And nearshore is, a hop, skip and a jump. So for example, for the US market, nearshoring would be somewhere like South America, Central America, or even the Caribbean. Offshoring as a distance would be somewhere like Europe or South Africa, or vice versa, depending on which country or which location you're based in. But why do you think that people do it? What are your top 3 reasons that you see with the clients that you work with for their offshoring reasons or nearshoring?
Well, I think, we'd be fooling ourselves if we didn't say for cost savings, right? I mean, the number one reason that everybody starts thinking about it is that. What I think we've seen is the dynamics are changing. Like I mentioned earlier, they're recognizing that these people around the world, this is what they do. This is what they're experts at. So, going to people that have customer experience with multiple different brands in their particular verticals, identifying the right partners that really can accelerate their clients' customer experience. And I keep saying, I feel like, customer experience keeps getting repeated, but the reality is we've got layers of people in there, right? So they're going to experts. They're figuring out that the modern outsourcers really do bring an increase in quality and service and new ideas and ways to help companies get better and let the companies focus on their core business fundamentals, right? And then, the fact of the matter is this world is a lot smaller now. With technology today, the ability to deploy outsourcing vendors on your stack securely, following GDPR, the California Data Protections Act, it's all possible. And actually, comparatively, it's a lot easier today to control that and create environments where you can have multiple outsourcers all around the world, including your own in-house on the same systems, following the same KPIs, apples to apples comparisons, do things like champion challengers and, without the complexities that we used to have. So I mean, I'd say the ease of it, the price number one, I think is always the starting point.
Yeah.
The ease and then the quality has significantly improved. It's not just about putting a warm body in the seat anymore. So, I mean, those are the three. If you're going to hold me down, that's it.
Hey, look, you can go on as long as you want. If you want to list 10 reasons, then you keep going.
There's so many more dynamics, right? I mean, the labor shortage, the fact that people just need coverage for Q4 right now. I mean, we're coming into the busiest time of year. And if you think the stores are busy, you should see some of the call volumes and chat volumes and email volumes. I mean, this is the hardest time of the year. And in the US, clearly, again, labor shortage, I mean, you got to do something, right? Because we all know if, a bad customer experience, people are going on social media. The multipliers have changed. It used to be, a 10-to-1 ratio. Every bad experience, they told 10 people. Now, I mean, the number's exponential if it's a terrible experience.
The amount of things I see on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter of people just ranting about a company. It's great for me because then I go and target them as one of my clients.
Right. Clearly. So do we all.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, the world has changed. The dynamics have shifted. And I think there's a lot of reasons, that drive it. But I mean, to me, it's not like it used to be where, it felt like you were just putting a warm body up. These companies really are excellent at what they do.
I couldn't agree with you more on that one. I think, you hit the nail on the head. I'll come back to the other ones, but I really want to talk about the quality of the people that we speak and work with every single day, and working with so many contact centers on a global scale that are outsourced. I work with outsourcers as placing people offshore. I also work with outsourcers as my training and development company, and I work with them on a regular basis. And some of the people that are in these positions are second to none when it comes to their delivery, when it comes to their scales, when it comes to their quality. And I think that really makes a difference. And also, I've seen it where some people have said to me, "Hey, can we do a 10-seater trial offshore, and we'll do a 3-month trial for 10 seats." And within 3 weeks, they're going, "Okay, can we ramp this to 60 people, please?
Right.
Can we ramp this to 100 people?" Because they're already seeing straight away that actually the stats are better than, and I don't want to say onshore, it's better than where they've had it previously. Because obviously they may have had it on another offshore site. They may have had it on an onshore, nearshore, wherever it might be. And it's not to say people's current services are bad. It's maybe they need some process improvement. Maybe they need some work down the pipeline. I got sent a picture from a friend of mine the other day who was on hold to a major airline. I'm not going to say who they were. And they got a 28-minute wait time to speak to somebody in customer service to talk about their tickets. For me, I mean, I couldn't justify staying on hold for 28 minutes. To make just a small adjustment. That's why we have online portals now. That's why companies try and set up these ways to, negate customers calling in. But sometimes you've just got to pick up the phone and you've just got to speak to somebody, because sometimes people feel comfortable doing that. The other thing I want to talk about is cost. And it's something that really comes up. Cost is a big player when it comes to location. And a lot of people will say, well, do you know what? If we go to somewhere like the Philippines, to India, to the eastern side of the world, it's a lot cheaper than maybe coming across to the South Americas, the South Africas, or the Caribbeans. I want your thoughts on this. Why do you think there's such a big price point in there?
Why do I think there's such a big price point?
A big price difference. Sorry, let me rephrase that question. Why do you think there's such a big price difference? I've had a lot of people said, "Hey, look, give me a price for the Philippines, give me a price for South America, give me a price for South Africa," and it's the same concept, it's the same work, but there is a price difference. Now, I want to address this because we get a lot of questions about this to say, "Well, hang on a minute, why don't I go and spend $5 an hour to $10 an hour over in the Philippines or India versus somewhere maybe I'm paying $10, $15, $20 somewhere else?"
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the cost of living in each geo is going to be significantly different. So you're going to have an impact on the actual cost of the agents. But I think some of the other drivers that people forget about, or why we're seeing nearshore winning, even in cost comparisons to other places, is the ease of travel, the quality. They're speaking English natively with minimal accent. We've got expat populations within Latin America, South America, Caribbean, in these major cities, where they can go work a contact center job as a part-time job and make good money. They just want something to keep them busy. And, who doesn't want to say, I'm going to go visit my outsourcing partner over in the Caribbean? I mean, in the end, sooner or later, we're going to be traveling again, right? And we're already seeing it. I've got an event coming up in Vegas next week. We're already starting to see business travel pick back up, and eventually we're going to want to go and visit our outsourcing partners.
Yeah.
I've made that trip over to the Philippines a bunch of times, and who wants to do 28 hours of travel time to get to a location? And not only that, but I mean, you can justify it by saying, well, the difference between, $10 to 15 is pretty big when you do it over scale. Well, yeah, it is. But the difference between, accents, the accessibility, the time zone differences, the ability to grab, your team when you need to within relative your time zone. There's a lot of reasons, but the quality too makes a big impact. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors, right? Some projects really do belong in India. India does a phenomenal job on a lot of the chat, the digital side. When it comes to engineers, hard to compare with many other countries. The Philippines has a great culture based on customer experience. They do a great job of the cultural training and stuff like that. And they've been doing it for a long time. Those are two of the most established outsourcing geos out there, right? But I think there's all kinds of other factors too. Some cultures are better at sales and collections. Some cultures are better for service, and depending on the quality, it all comes down to you get what you pay for. Not necessarily saying that one geo is better than another, but I think there's a lot of factors to consider when you're talking about what actually goes into pricing in an outsourcing market. So, I mean, does that answer your question?
No, it does. Hey, look, I think that was a great answer. You hit the nail on the head with that one, if I'm honest. And I think you're right. And I think, I think a lot of countries who outsourced initially, and I want to touch on this because it was something I actually received recently from a client of mine, and said they were concerned about, they love what we had to offer, but they were concerned about moving offshore. And the concern, I kind of put this to bed very quickly, and I don't know if you feel the same way. The concern is an age-old concern, because when outsourcing first really came about and people were outsourcing to a far distance, and I'm not picking on one particular location, I'm talking about everywhere. Okay. The UK especially got burned with offshoring to distance. And I think the reason why they got burned is when it first happened, because we didn't have the internet as we have today, because we don't have the cultural exchange that we have today, especially in this type of industry. Customers did get a little bit irate. And I think some customers were very rude to these offshore contact centers, which burnt bridges, and vice versa. I think there was some, it got people's backs up, and they didn't know how to handle that type of customer that was speaking to them. And this is everywhere. And I noticed a big shift, and I'm going back to around about 2000 and anywhere between 2009 and 2013, that kind of 4-year period where contact centers migrated back to onshore for that window. And now they've realized that actually the cultures have got better, the connects have got better, the migrations have started to improve. And now they're moving back offshore again, maybe to a different location, maybe to the same place. Did you witness the same thing in that kind of same window?
It was about the same time. I'd say maybe a few years difference. We probably started a little bit earlier. And I think after 26 years in this industry, everything's cyclical. In my opinion, everything is. Now, maybe this is a transition that's going to continue for the long haul, because I think that the biggest shift is what you mentioned: internet, the world getting smaller, the technology advancing, the acceptance of alternate cultures. Maybe there won't be a cyclical fallback to, we have to bring it back onshore. I think verticals will change, but I mean, yeah, there's no question that there was a period of time where the big technology companies, the laptop manufacturers, I won't name any names, there was satire about the experience of outsourcing across the world, and the problems with the language barrier and the transition. I think a lot of that stuff is overcome, but also the infrastructure build out in a lot of these locations. I mean, you travel around and you see some of these business parks, and the redundancies that they have in the power, the multiple different pipes coming in, just all the things that they built in these countries to really support the outsourcing. Yeah, I mean, it's changed. The game's completely different. And again, I mean, the technology, I keep coming back to this because I'm a natural technologist. When you're at the point as an organization, when I can literally give credentials to an outsourcer with the right desktop as a service platform that has all of my platforms loaded into it, has all the security protocols and everything I need, and I can turn up an outsourcer in the matter of hours just with credentialing, as opposed to what we used to have to do to interconnect my in-house contact center to my outsourcer. I mean, it's light years difference. Just absolutely completely different world we live in today. So I actually really do believe that the outsourcing, whether it's nearshore, offshore, doesn't really matter where. I don't think we'll see that same kind of pullback to, it has to be onshore. Let's get it back in house. Then not only that, but the world is moving at a speed where you go from here domestically, $40 an hour, fully loaded in house, to 15 to 10, depending on volumes and all the other nuances. It's really hard if you're getting quality service for your customers to even consider, hey, let's go back to paying 4 times more. Right? I mean,
and that's the thing. I mean, as you say, we talk about cost, and we'll come back to this in a minute. But the cost is a big window for everybody. That's why we get a lot of the people that we speak to. Just a comment from Robert. Rob, I missed your first comment. I do apologize. I'm going to circle back around and pick that one up in a minute, especially when we come on to career paths. But Rob made a very good comment here. The need for English-Spanish bilingual skills in the US also makes nearshore attractive versus offshore. I couldn't agree with you more. We all know that Spanish is a second, third spoken language in the world. I can't remember, so forgive me on stats. I do apologize. But I know it's very, very high. And wherever you go now, it's English, Spanish, and I believe like Mandarin or Chinese. These are the top spoken languages in the world. And I think especially for the US side of things, Spanish is a very, very fluently spoken or number spoken language across the country. And I think you're absolutely right. Bilingual centers are something that are definitely attributed to that. A couple of centers that I work with based out of Honduras, Panama, Colombia, they cover that bilingual stage. Do you think that's come into play as well for you, Fred, bilingual?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, multiple languages is always a search. It's not just English and Spanish anymore. Portuguese, French, depending on where the client is located and what their footprint looks like from a client base. But yeah, I mean, languages, access to multiple languages. Here in the U.S., it's a lot harder to find a multilingual, as a BPO, than it is to go somewhere else, nearshore or offshore. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Rob. I mean, obviously, English and Spanish as a bilingual skill for an agent, having them cross-pollinate, different skill routes is clearly a logical way to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I remember working. I migrated a campaign to an outsourcer many years ago, and they wanted everybody to speak English, but then they wanted 2 people for these different mix of countries. So we had to get English speaking, but then bilingual, 2 for German, 2 for Dutch, 2 for Spanish, 2 for somewhere else. I mean, that was fun. I mean, it was great because obviously we could train everybody in English. That was interesting. But then obviously setting everything up for everybody's individual countries that they were dealing with, that was a challenge. It really was. It was fun. Don't get me wrong. I learned what not to do many times.
Yeah.
which we like to think that only happens once in our lives, but that definitely doesn't. No. So that's a biggie. Now I want to cycle back because obviously we spoke about career paths within contact centers. We touched on it, and I think it's a big thing to talk about, especially with outsourcing. Now, one of the big things that really interests me across outsourcers on a global scale is what they are able to do for their teams internally, what they do, what they offer, what they support with. Especially, again, my main market is the South African market from an outsourcing perspective, and I work with a lot of clients there. I see those career paths. I see what they do for their agents. I see the support they give them. I see the training that they give them. And a lot of the managers and a lot of the contact center owners have worked from the ground up. As we spoke about at the very beginning of this session today, is working as an agent and getting to where we are now. And I think this is something that a lot of people want to understand. What opportunities are out there for them? Can they grow? Can they maneuver? And a point that Rob actually brought up in his other comment that I missed over, and I apologize, Rob, is a key point from him that he's discussed with new hires for years is almost every single one of the leadership for most of the contact centers have all started as agents. And I love it when contact centers home grow their internal employees and they promote from within. And for those of you watching online, listening to the podcast, or have been with us for the entire series, you know that Jason and I talk about internal promotions through and through. That is something that we believe in and that we want to talk about. In outsourcing, in the call centers that you've seen, Fred, do you see that happen a lot? Do you see it happen infrequently? The people that you work with, have they been through or have they climbed up the ladder? What's that experience look like? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I want people to know that are listening to this episode now or in the future to understand that when you put work offshore, when you put work nearshore, you are creating jobs in that country. And it's not that you're taking it away from wherever it is or whatever you're doing. It's if you're setting up something new, you're setting up a business, you're creating that foundation for work, for culture, for employment and career paths on a global scale. So what would you say your experience has been in this, Fred?
Yeah, I think the really good organizations out there focus on this, right? I mean, first of all, as an agent in a lot of these countries, the healthcare that's provided, the money that they get paid is really good for their area, for their geo. They can create a career. This is something that everybody looks at. You get in to one of these centers, and it's a good paying job. It's a great career path. And then the ones that really develop their agents into leaders and really get not just, the old philosophy, and I've heard you and Jason talk about this, and Jason and I have talked about this in the past. The idea of the best performing sales agent always gets moved up into a supervisory role just because they're the best performing salespeople. And you'll appreciate this as a trainer. It's recognizing what makes a great leader and building those people and creating environments where if you want to strive for leadership, you have a path to get there. You have the training and the tools. I mean, these centers invest more than what people realize. I mean, some of the best even get down into what colors create the right mental state in order to perform the activity. So they paint their walls in certain colors. I'm not kidding. This is a thing. And in sales environments, it's green. And, I don't remember what the customer experience colors were. I'm trying to think back. That was a long time ago. But this has been around for a long time, right? It really is a great way to develop people in a culture and give them a great career path. And people like you and I mean, it's proof that in pre-developed country or in first world countries that you can do the same thing. I mean, it's the opportunities there, and the best of them always do that, right? Yeah. I think what's interesting is as you get into more developed markets, more competitive markets, as they start to hit saturation points, in those individual cities, the stealing of great leaders, right, starts to happen from BPO to BPO. And that's where I can see sometimes where that raising from an agent up into leadership isn't quite as common in more developed areas. But definitely, I mean, the great outsourcers, great companies in general, if you don't give people a career path today, I mean, my kids are, in that 20, 23, 26 range, they're adults and they don't want to go work for a company that doesn't give them a career path. I mean, no matter what they do, so I think it's just best practice anyways. But yeah, I mean, the great outsourcers for sure invest heavily on opportunities to bring people up through the ranks and really give them a chance to develop into, even senior level leaderships. And oftentimes the great outsourcers, you ask the senior level leaders, and the ones localized are most of the time started out as an agent.
And do you know what? I love that story. Just when somebody tells me that story that they've worked their way up to get to where they are today, I love it because it's a journey. And these people have put the time and the effort in, and they know, when you speak to these types of people that they're going to come out and deliver something good because that's what they've been homegrown to do.
Right.
So using that theory and obviously applying it to the US, and I want to understand this because a lot of my clients are the US, a lot of them in the UK, and they're all over the shop. And as you said, you talked about a workforce shortage, and we talk about career paths, we talk about people of today, and obviously we're outsourcing because maybe contact centers can't find the personnel in the US. We both experienced that, and I want to understand the clients that you've spoken to historically. Is it that they can't, the reason why they're outsourcing, or potentially the reason why they're outsourcing, is because they can't fulfill those seats in the US? People don't want to work in contact centers anymore. Yeah, I think we touched on this briefly when we spoke previously, when we talked about, people want to become entrepreneurs now. They want to do their own business. They don't want to go and be a bum on a seat answering phones or listening to people shout at them. Is it a status thing? What have you seen US side of why people are being forced to kind of outsource because they can't find the staff?
Well, I mean, I think there's all kinds of dynamics. First of all, in the beginning, it was just because we needed to get, more capacity for when things, I'm not going to say the word, but when things started to lock down, I mean, we needed to figure out, shift and move and get people up and running, right? Today, there's a different dynamic. We had a heavy round of government stimulus that, allowed, a percentage of the society to choose to, be in a position to get large checks every week and stay home. And although there were contact center jobs that you could work from home at that time, they chose otherwise for whatever reason. Not my place to make a decision or judgment. It just was what it was. But that wasn't the underlying problem. I think that just gave a reason to bring the real problems up to life, which is, I mean, the younger generations don't want to work for anybody that don't match their vision, that don't give them some reason that they really want to come to work, something to believe in. They don't have a great culture. Culture is one of those interesting dynamics that I think a lot of people talk about, but when it all comes down to it, it's just words on a wall, on a poster, and that's it. And I mean, so there's all kinds of dynamics. The younger generation that would normally take a customer service job just because they needed a job, people aren't willing to just take a job because they just need a job. I mean, I saw the other day, I was walking into a retail store here locally, and they had big signs right in the front, $20 an hour, starting for the holidays, and I mean. So if you can go stock shelves for $20 an hour, or you can sit at home and be on the phone for 10, 12, 15, whatever we raise the rates to, I mean, what are people going to do? I think there's all kinds of dynamics here in the States in particular. So, I mean, yes, there's a problem finding people, obviously, but why? I think it varies. But we clearly need to fix the cultures of a lot of organizations, create career paths, get behind something. For God's sake, stand up for something, and really help these people develop careers out of this stuff, because it's doable. I mean, you can go into a contact center. Nobody talks about this stuff, but you can go into a contact center and go from an agent to a supervisor to a leader. And if you want to get into tech, there's there's thousands of CX technology companies out there hungry for people that have experience around the industry and get the client's needs. I mean, I never had any training or anything on telephony platforms or boards or building servers, but I mean, there was at one point where I was literally building servers and implementing them and configuring T1 signaling. And I mean, the paths are endless. It's just nobody talks about them here in the States and doesn't create it as an environment. If I was a kid looking at this, I wouldn't, unless somebody told me, I would never think about that.
Look, I got to say, look, I think my biggest learning curve was moving into the outsource world. My first call center job, I worked in-house. I worked for a call center in the north of England, and I worked there for 18 months. Okay, and I didn't learn very much. I learned to improve my sales skills. I learned to improve my CX skills. Don't get me wrong. When I say I didn't learn very much, it was like, I didn't learn of the wider business. But what I did learn was where my place was going to be in that call center environment. And I learned very quickly that, I didn't want to be a team leader. I didn't want to be a supervisor. I wanted to move into training. Now, one of the things is whenever you get new hires, they go through a call center. Everybody wants to be a trainer. Everyone. And the reason why I want to be a trainer is because they see the fun side of it. They see the fun trainer getting up, telling me all the cool stuff without the responsibility. And I remember when I first moved into, and I'll come on to this, but I moved from the in-house to an outsourcer as a trainer. I then got that reaction that everybody's like, oh, how do I become a trainer? How do I do what you do? And I'm not going to say it takes a certain person. It doesn't. It takes a certain personality to be able to get up in front of people and relay information. But you've also got to have the gravitas to be able to convey that information with the belief, with the foundation, with the trust, and learn everything. And I think people forget that as a trainer, you have to know more than the agents in the first place, because you have to be able to answer every question they're going to throw at you. And for me, I didn't expect that. I didn't know that was coming, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. But I learned very quickly, again, what not to do. I made mistakes. We all did. We hold our hands up. But like I said, the biggest learning curve I went through was moving from in-house to an outsourcer. Working for the outsource market changed my view on everything. I got to learn, as you say, so much in areas that I never would have touched as an in-house trainer, because I'm having to get involved and get my hands dirty to work with new projects, to work with new clients. And whereas an in-house, I would only ever stay with that one client because that was my client, it was in-house. But as an outsourcer, I would then be working on technology. Then I'd be working on sales. Then I'd be working on CX. And then, do you know what? I'd be helping the IT do this because I need it for my project. Whereas normally the IT team in-house would do X, Y, and Z for you. And I think that makes a big difference. I mean, would you agree with the statement like that?
Yeah, it's funny. You and I talked briefly about this, but that exact path from agent in-house to outsourcing trainer was mine too. And there's no question that you learn a lot more than, I would argue, than even the leadership on the floor level leadership, because you have to understand, the system, the UX, like you said, you got to know the answers. Agents are going to ask you all kinds of questions during training. You got to be aware, but you touch so many in an outsourcer, you touch so many other projects, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so 1 second you're learning about one particular vertical, one product, one service set. Then all of a sudden you're working on a whole nother one, and you start to learn this wider, I guess, set of information where you start to see patterns. And I'm really good. What's made me good is I recognize patterns in human behavior and the things that I do. And, all my mistakes that I've made, trust me, we're all the same. We all make a ton, no matter who you are. But that's what we learn from, right? It's those pain points as adults in changing behavior patterns. It's the pain that actually causes change, right? We expect adults to change and get better. The funny part is our neuro pathways are set by the time we're 5 years old. And in order to change an adult, it actually takes something pretty significant. So yeah, I mean, I'd say trainers, our industry, it's frustrated me for a long time. Trainers don't get enough credit. They don't get paid well enough, and they don't have all the tool sets. I can't tell you how many companies pre-COVID didn't even have a solution to provide training. They were using printed out booklets still in some cases that I went into. Training, we don't commit enough resources as an industry still to this day. And that's a big challenge moving forward, man. As an industry, we need to stop messing around with that because, anyways, I get a little.
I was just going to say, you just sound like me and Jason banging on that beating drum every time because we all cycle back round to it. And I think, look, we'll come back to this point in a minute. I want you to carry on, but that is, yes, exactly. Carry on.
No. I mean, I don't want to get too far off kilter with this one or get too loud about it. I mean, you get my point, though. We as an industry don't commit enough to the actual trainers and resources and tools. And today with, I don't want to call it the new norm because this is just the normal now. There's no question in my mind globally, this is a hybrid model world. And I don't care if you're an engineer or you're a contact center person, there's no question in my mind that the majority of us are going to be working at home. And I keep hearing some of the contact center owners talking about, God, I got to get them back in the office. Look, the people here in the States have already revolted. They're saying, no, I'm not going back in the office. I can go find another contact center job with somebody else who does remote only. We're in a hybrid world now. There's no question about it. There's no reason not to. But in order to do that effectively, you have to figure out new ways to engage agents. Most of the training happens post-training, meaning when they get out on the floor, it's the interactions with the agents. It's the asking of the questions while they're live. It's hearing customers. That's where the learning and retention happens. Yeah. And if you don't have a strategy to do that digitally, you're already way behind the 8 ball. So that's one of the segments that really needs heavy investment in our industry. But I'm preaching to the choir.
Hey, look, I am on that train with you, Fred. Look, I want to address some of that, and I just want to touch on a comment that Rob has dropped in again there. The outsourced trainers who deal with 24/7 programs also can have pretty crazy schedules, and the reliance on them showing up is pretty incredible. It is. It absolutely is. And I think some people underestimate the power of an outsourced trainer, what they do, how they're involved with, when I'm working with clients offshore, admittedly, I will go in there from time to time and say, hey, look, I'm going to do the training because I know your training team are probably stretched. I'll come in there, I'll help, I'll do some sales training or whatever it is. And then, I've had calls with them say, yeah, I've done this project yesterday, I'm on this project tomorrow, and then I'm coming to your project to deliver next week, and then I'm out here, and I'm like, look, I know you got to soak all this up like a sponge, but it's moving from project to project, campaign to campaign, which is an interesting one. But again, going back to it, you learn so much about who brings you what, who delivers what, the content that still goes around my head today about stats for this and stats for that. I still use it in sales training from one project that gave me this information 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, because you know what? That's a great piece of content. And I've remembered it and it stuck with me. Yeah. Look, you preaching to the choir on this and banging the drum is, it's something that Jason and I speak about very regularly. And I think, it's something that the training industry is, whether in-house, outsourced, internal, external, consultant. I think sometimes people are afraid to spend money. I think people are sometimes don't want to spend it for fear of what they are not or are going to get, but they don't know the end result because sometimes it's not always tangible that you can see. And sometimes it's expected. So I think there's a big gap and there's a big bridge there that, Fred, I think, and I don't want to go into a new topic because we've only got, 5-10 minutes left here. But I think, you, me and Jason on an episode and having a conversation about training resource and the money that people pump into training. For those of you out there listening that don't want to spend on training, we can tell you why you should spend it and how you should spend it. You don't even have to hire us, but we'll tell you the whys and the wherefores. Look, what I really want to touch on, and I don't want to end just yet because we've still got a lot of listeners here all over the world. Thank you for tuning in. And I think it's a very vital point right now that I want to get some kind of more you gave me your top 3 points earlier on for the outsourcing piece and why people do it. I want to get kind of your pros of why you think people should outsource. And like I said, this is not to take it away from any onshore or anything like that. I want you. Why do you physically believe that companies should outsource their services onshore, nearshore, offshore, wherever it might be?
Yeah.
What fundamentally do you believe in why companies can gain benefits that you support and that you deliver as part of your clients?
Yeah, spending so much time as a software executive, I've always believed wholeheartedly that you do what is core to your business and you trust experts to do the rest, period. And when it comes down to it, again, the world has shifted. I mean, these outsourcers they're really good at what they do and they help clients all over the world. And if you have, you're going to the right ones, that's the key, right? Because there's thousands of outsourcers around the world, and some of them are just getting started, and some of them have been around for years and haven't shifted from their old mentalities. But there are really good ones out there. So knowing and identifying the right ones and getting to them, and then partnering with them, it's a no-brainer to me. Do what you do your core part of your business and own that, and then outsource the rest. And I think fundamentally businesses are recognizing that again. I think Silicon Valley has really driven that home. Secondarily, how can you argue with the internal costs of an individual benefits, leadership, infrastructure? Not that sometimes there's a piece I believe that in every customer experience that a company needs to own, because you have to have internal experts to work with your partners anyways. And there's certain levels depending on the business, right? You can argue plus or minus whatever percentage that needs to be, but I think the rest of it can be outsourced once you have those experts and knowledge and depth in house. And then again, technology today, it just makes it so much easier. It's not what it used to be. We don't see hardly any projects that are of any decent size where the company, the first party client, is not pushing their technology stack to the outsourcer.
Yeah.
So, it's a different world. You can manage it. It's a small global world, in my opinion. And we're all more accepting. And it's not like it used to be where if there was a rough accent that people would get upset. Heck, I've been inside contact centers in the US where there are all kinds of accents, and some of them US based natives that I would question whether I could understand them if I called them. So, to me, it just makes sense to outsource. It really does. And there you go.
Look, no, I think 3 very great points there of why you should do it. And guys, look, for those of you that are thinking of outsourcing, know anybody that is outsourcing or is thinking about it, please share this episode with them, because I think there's a lot of value here. We could, as we spoke about earlier, Fred, we could talk for hours on this topic. We could keep going. When Fred and I were talking about the prep for this episode, we were like, okay, yeah, we're going to go here. This is the direction we're going to go. I'm sure there's a list of questions. I've still got like 10 questions on my list here that I was going to go into, but I think we've touched like 2, maybe 3 of them. Which is always the case, because you know what? You drop bombs, you talk about why it's worth it, and you talk about all the good stuff that you can get out of it. Fred, look, I think I really want to pick this up again. I'd love Jason to be on an episode where we can talk about this. I know he's got his 2 cents when it comes to outsourcing. The 3 of us are in the outsourcing game. We talk about it. We bring it across. We talk about cost, the whys, the benefits, the teams, and everything else. So obviously, out of curiosity, if anybody wants to find you on LinkedIn or social media or contact you, is there any way that they can reach out to you directly? What's the best way to get in contact if they've got any questions?
Yeah, I'm super active on LinkedIn, but obviously anybody can reach out to me on there. I accept a lot of invites, and I'm always willing to help. That's the easiest path to me, because LinkedIn's always on. But obviously, I think you shared out all my contact information, right?
Yep, it's all out there, guys. Check out my posts on social media. You'll see the links to Fred on LinkedIn. Please join us. Please follow him on there. I'll share some stuff out on Instagram as well. So thank you very much, Fred, for joining us. I hope everybody out there has got some really good tips on there on outsourcing and the whys and the wherefores and how it should be done. And like I said, we're going to pick up another episode with Jason on the line as well when he gets back from all of his traveling. He's here, there, and everywhere these days. Then we're going to be getting him on because the three of us, I'm sure, could talk for hours around this subject. For those of you that are listening live, thank you very much. We've got viewers over India, Philippines, South Africa, a lot from the US, a load from the UK. You are streaming on the website, LinkedIn, Facebook, and everywhere else that we're located. So thank you very much for tuning in. For those of you that are listening afterwards on the podcast, don't forget all of our previous episodes are across all of the platforms on Amazon, Google, Facebook, on Apple, you name it, we're everywhere. And we're coming at you with call center confidence. This is episode 23 on outsourcing. Thank you very much. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I apologize. Instagram has sucked over the last couple of weeks because I've not been doing it, but I will get that up and running, and all of our previous episodes are on there. And also, please feel free to check out the videos and the episodes on our YouTube page, and of course on our website. In the meantime, Fred Stacey, thank you very much for joining us today for this episode. I'm Oliver Catt. I'll see you next week with Jason Cutter back in the hot seat, and we'll see you then. In the meantime, have a great week. And if you've got any questions whatsoever, don't be afraid, get in touch and let us know what you want to hear about on our next episode. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Oliver.